And is there a third?
We only have two counsel, Your Honor.
Oh, you only have two counsel. Okay, thank you. Okay, that's great. So ready to begin the trial of Jesse James then? I'll hear the opening statement from counsel for the Crown, please.
Hey, before I start, may I ask how you would like to be addressed, Mr. Justice or Your Honor?
Your Honor.
Your Honor, my name is Sir Sharon Kaur, and I am representing the Crown in this matter. Your Honor, this is a case about anger, revenge, and friendship. The defendant was hurt, the defendant was angry, and the defendant was willing to do anything and everything in their power to get revenge on Alex Robinson. Revenge for the attempted murder of their friend Bailey Barker. I anticipate the evidence will show that Bailey Barker was involved in some not so legal activities and was a high-ranking member of the Crimson Kings, a gang. Anger, when it gets out of control and turns destructive, can lead to many problems. The damaging of relationships, the raging feeling for revenge, and physical altercations. We expect to show that Jesse James was angry and that Jesse James was willing to do whatever it took to get revenge for the attempted murder on Bailey Barker. A suspicion that never saw to fruition, as the police found absolutely no evidence at all incriminating Alex Robinson. But Jesse James thought otherwise, a thought that led to the loss of a life, the planned and deliberate murder of Alex Robinson. At the end of this trial, I urge you to weigh the evidence and testimonies and find the defendant, Jesse James, guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. I urge you to take a stand for justice. Today, the evidence we present to you will show that Jesse James did, in fact, intend to murder Alex Robinson in cold blood on the morning of July 2nd, 2020. Not only that, the evidence will also show that the murder was planned and deliberate. The defendant was ready to risk it all. The evidence will show that at a Canada Day celebration that took place at 30 Domino Avenue, hours before the murder, the defendant got into an altercation with Alex Robinson. An altercation where Jesse James threw the first punch. An altercation where Jesse James drew a gun and threatened Robinson. An altercation where Jesse James professed his urge for revenge. The evidence will further show that Jesse James acted on that urge and planned and executed the murder of Alex Robinson. You'll learn that on July 2nd, 2020, at 1:55 a.m., a single person entered the apartment building where Alex Robinson was present with his girlfriend, Marley Johnson. The same individual burst into their apartment and started shooting at them, 15 to 20 shots with no mercy shown. The paramedics were called, but they arrived too late. Alex Robinson was pronounced dead after he underwent emergency surgery. He had succumbed to his injuries. But the defendant made a mistake, Your Honor. They took their mask off and revealed themselves. They revealed themselves to Alex Robinson, Marley Johnson, and Ash Lee. Out of the three, two will be called to testify on the stand today. To prove that Jesse James was indeed the murderer, we will call three witnesses to the stand. Along with Marley Johnson and Ash Lee, Constable Lloyd Devon will also be called. Our first witness to take the stand is Constable Lloyd Devon, Your Honor. Constable Lloyd Devon is a detective specializing in homicide cases. They will bring forward implicating evidence such as the transcript of the 911 call, the defendant's cell phone GPS data, maps and photos of the crime scene, surveillance footage from the crime scene, and the very weapon that was used to murder Alex Robinson, the handgun that was also recovered from the crime scene. The constable will tell you about their findings after they use their expert skills and analyze the GPS and surveillance evidence, the fingerprints and the DNA, and how they came to the conclusion that the defendant, Jesse James, murdered Alex Robinson. Our second witness to take the stand is Ash Lee. They are good friends with both Alex Robinson and Marley Johnson. They also witnessed the altercation firsthand as they were in the same house. They will tell you about how during the Canada Day celebration, when they came back to the apartment with the defendant, that they overheard the defendant on the phone. They will also identify that the gun they saw the defendant pull on Alex Robinson at the Canada Day celebration as the same gun they saw at their apartment when the gunmen burst in. Lastly, Ashley will establish that when the gunmen took their mask off, that they saw Jesse James's face. And finally, our last witness is Marley Johnson, Alex Robinson's girlfriend, who was also a victim of the shooting. She had witnessed the altercation firsthand and will tell you of the sour relationship between the defendant and Alex Robinson. She will tell you how the defendant pulled a gun on Alex Robinson at the Canada Day celebration and vowed for revenge. She will tell you how he burst into the apartment they were at on July 2nd, 2020, and fired 15 to 20 shots at Robinson and her. She will tell you how those shots eventually led to the death of Alex Robinson, her boyfriend. The evidence is mounting, and the defense will do everything in their power to prove otherwise. The defense will tell you that the defendant was staying at Bailey Barker's the entire night. But what the defense will not tell you is that at the time of the murder, Bailey Barker and Jesse James were not together. They were not in the same room. We expect the evidence presented today to minimize the alibi of Jesse James being with Bailey Barker at the time of the murder. The defense will call Dr. Dubois to the stand to comment on eyewitness memories and why they are poor. However, after the direct examination of our witnesses about their first-hand experience with Jesse James, we expect that you will find the Crown witness to be credible and reliable. The defense will tell you a story of coincidences. They will tell you a story built on assumptions. But remember this: the defendant acted on anger. The defendant was willing to do whatever it took to get revenge. The defendant should be deemed guilty as charged. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kaur. Okay, I'll hear the opening statement for counsel for the accused.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is David McLeod, M-C-L-E-O-D, first initial D for the record. My co-counsel is Paige Booth, B-O-O-T-H, first initial P. This is a case about a person being in two places at once. And in this case, that person is the accused, Jesse James. You might ask yourself, that's impossible. No one can be in two places at once. Well, that's exactly what the Crown wants you to believe. Everyone in this courtroom is here because Jesse James has been wrongfully accused of murder, in murdering his longtime friend, Alex Robinson. In fact, Jesse James and Alex Robinson rode to work on a regular basis. They were close friends and workmates. You will hear testimony that on the night of July 1st, there was a communal barbecue at which the accused attended. You will hear that a lot of people were drinking and smoking marijuana at this barbecue. You will also hear testimony of an altercation that took place between Mr. James and Mr. Robinson earlier in the evening. A drink-fueled argument that led to the accused to leave the party. In the early morning of July 2nd, at approximately 2 a.m., a lone gunman entered an apartment and opened fire on two of the occupants. These occupants were Alex Robinson and Marlee Johnson. Mr. Robinson, unfortunately, succumbed to his injuries, and Miss Johnson was left with critical injuries. In the minute that it took the gunman to unload his gun, and during the turmoil of the situation, there is no possible way a victim could get a good look at the gunman. But that is what the Crown will have you believe. You will hear this supported by our expert witness, who will explain how specific environmental factors of that evening make it near impossible for the witness to have a clear recollection of the events. You will come to see that the witnesses from the prosecution are not credible, and that the physical evidence against Jesse James does not meet the standard of proof. Now, that all being said, I want to remind the members of the jury that the onus is on the Crown to prove without a reasonable doubt And I submit to you that there is just that, a reasonable doubt. Doubt that our client murdered his friend, Alex Robinson, and doubt that he attempted to murder Marley Johnson. I also submit that Jesse James could not be in two places at once. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McLeod. Okay, I will hear the Crown's first witness, please.
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to call Constable Lloyd Devon to the stand, please.
Okay, we'll assume Constable Devon has been sworn or affirmed, so you can begin your examination.
Good afternoon. My name is Rebecca Mons, and I'm one of the prosecution attorneys. May I identify you as Constable Devon?
Yes, you may.
Thank you for taking the time to answer these questions and for your service in the Canadian Forces. How long have you been an investigative detective with the Toronto Police Service?
Since 2012.
Have you participated in any continued education in the area of forensic science?
Yes, I have over 200 hours so that I can stay up to date with the latest practices. I also have qualifications in numerous forensic branches, including fingerprinting, DNA analysis, crime scene reconstruction, cell phone and GPS tracking, and firearms examination.
What educational experience do you have that is relevant to the work you complete with the Toronto Police Service?
I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from the University of Toronto. I did follow that up with a master's in forensic science.
How many investigations have you been involved with as a detective with the Toronto Police Service?
21 investigations, including 13 homicide cases similar to this one.
Your Honor, may I have permission to show page 21 in the evidence, paragraph 2 of Constable Devon's witness statement?
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm trying to share the screen. I believe I do not have access. It says the host is not allowing.
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry,
there we
it
go.
should be on now.
Could you please explain to the court how fingerprint evidence is analyzed?
Yes, I can. So fingerprint evidence actually compares prints found at a crime scene with prints of potential suspects. So we analyze those fingerprints for similarities and differences in patterns, such as arches and loops, and we find those matching points. The more the points, the more likely the fingerprint does correspond to that individual. Different police forces do require different points for identification. At the Toronto Police Service, it is 15 points.
And could you please describe the fingerprints you found at the crime scene?
Yes, the fingerprints we found were 3 complete sets, which matched Jesse James.
And how many matching points did you find between the 3 sets of recovered fingerprints and Jesse James?
The first print, I believe, was 19-point match. Print 2 was an 18-point match, and print 3 was a 16-point match.
Your Honor, may I have permission to show Exhibit 1?
Sure.
According to Exhibit 1, being Constable Giroux's reports, what were some key findings that supported the theory that Jesse James was the shooter?
The witnesses actually identified 3 key facts of what had been going on. So the first was that there was a conflict between the defendant and the victim. My understanding, the conflict had been ongoing regarding Bailey Barker and the attempted murder on Bailey Barker. That was believed to have been Alex Robinson. The second was an incident where the defendant actually drew a gun and then promised to inflict harm on the defendant. This was at the barbecue right before the shooting. And then the third was that the witnesses had actually identified both visually and audibly the shooter as Jesse James during the shooting.
Your Honor, may I have permission to show page 20 of the witness statement of Constable Devon under paragraph 1?
Yes, go ahead.
Could you please describe the use of cellular location analysis in your report?
Yes, cellular location analysis is a branch of forensics dealing specifically with the location of an individual's cell phone when they're making phone calls. So this relies heavily on a connection between the user's phone and their cellular provider's network. So these calls are routed to the closest cell phone tower. And every time a call is made, the cell phone provider stores the information about the call, including the cell phone tower that call was actually routed through.
And Your Honor, may I present Exhibit B on page 49 and Exhibit 7C on page 50?
Yeah, go ahead.
Could you please explain Jesse's cell phone records?
Yes, the cell phone provider is Rogers, and we use this to determine Jesse's proximity in correspondence with the crime. So we actually found that he was in approximate location at the time of the crime. There are 4 towers near the scene. There's 2 close to 191 King Street, which is where Bailey Barker lives, and 2 close to 30 Domino Avenue, which is the crime scene. The cell phone record showed that there were several calls made on Jesse's phone between 8 p.m. on July 1st and 8 a.m. on July 2nd.
What does the cell tower data tell you about Mr. James' movements between 1:40 a.m. and 2:33 a.m. on July 2nd?
So it appeared that at 1:40 and 1:48 a.m., the phone calls were made within proximity of the crime scene. And at 2:33, the phone call log was closer to Barker's home, which corresponds with her testimony her affidavit that Jesse James was at their house around 2:30 in the morning.
Your Honor, permission to show Exhibit 8 on page 51, please.
Sure.
On Exhibit 8, which you relied on in your report, could you please explain what this exhibit is for those in the courtroom today?
This is actually a general area map which shows the travel time between Bailey Barker's home at 191 King Street and the crime scene at 30 Domino Avenue.
Can you please read out how long it would take to walk this distance?
The walking distance is 17 minutes.
I have permission to show pages 21 and 22 on Constable Lloyd's witness statement under paragraph 2.
Yes, go ahead.
Could you please describe the DNA evidence that was collected from the handgun?
Yes, so the DNA was actually a mixture of 2 or more individuals' DNA, so we couldn't make a match to a specific person. Usually we look at the length of short sequences for DNA base pairs. So instead we had to do an alternative method, which we actually looked at the specific base pairs found within these sequences. This can actually entirely exclude someone from being the source of the DNA. So in terms of the DNA we recovered from the handgun, we did find that Jesse could not be excluded as a contributing source to the DNA.
And what is your conclusion based on all the evidence you've collected and information you have reviewed?
The evidence strongly suggests that Jesse James shot and killed Alex Robinson on July 2nd, 2020.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Cross-examination.
Good afternoon, Detective, and thank you for your service. One of the evidence exhibits for which you based your report on was the arrest report prepared by Officer David Giroux, correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, permission to approach the witness with the arrest report for Officer David Giroux. Your Honor, this is labeled Exhibit 1 in the factum.
Did you wish to share your screen?
Yes, my co-counsel will share.
Okay.
Detective Lloyd, you noted that the interview transcript conducted for Ashley, You noted that the interview transcript conducted for Ash Lee was the morning of the crime occurred, was omitted from your report. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Co-counsel?
But just to clarify, it was Detective Giroux that had admitted it.
Do you know the reason for that?
No, I do not know the reason for that. Yeah, I don't know the reason for that. I can't comment on how he decided to conduct his investigation.
Thank you. Your Honor, permission to approach the witness with the fingerprint report. This is labeled Exhibit 13 in the factum.
Okay, you want to show the screen again?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you, you recognize this report, I assume, correct?
Yes, I do.
On the second page here, can you read the highlighted part for me, please?
Yes. Print 1 and 2 did not match the prints of Jesse James.
So no fingerprints were matching Jesse James. They were not found on the gun at all, correct?
If you're referring to the fingerprints on the gun, no, they were smudged.
Okay, thank you.
But that can also be for a number of reasons. That can be from sweat. That can also be from the shooter potentially trying to rub them off.
Okay. Your Honor, do I have permission to approach the witness with the cell phone records? They've already been brought in by prosecution.
Sure. Yeah.
We'll share our screen again. Detective Lloyd, can you read on 7A the phone number that's highlighted there?
Mm-hmm. Do you want me to read out the number? Sorry.
Yes, please.
416-222-1980.
And at the top of the page of Exhibit B, 7B, can you read the phone number that's highlighted as well?
416-555-2842.
And sorry, again, on 7A, at the bottom of the screen, can you read the bottom highlighted portion?
Mm-hmm.
That it was canceled since?
Canceled July 2nd, 2020.
Okay, can you explain why there's two different phone numbers?
No, I can't explain that. All I know is that Marley Johnson was the one to confirm the phone number and that this is what we received from Rogers.
And can you clarify why the postal codes do not match?
Sorry, just give me a second. I'm just taking a look at what you mean.
On the address? The postal codes?
Yes, I don't know the reason for that. That would be a Canada Post issue. I do know that there are several addresses out there that have different postal codes for different softwares or different people pulling up different postal codes. That's a Canada Post issue.
Okay. Your Honor, can we share the surveillance footage transcript? It's I believe it is Exhibit 12.
Sure, go ahead.
Can you confirm in the surveillance footage transcript that it was not possible to see the face of the suspect?
Oh, at the highlighted entry, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. At that particular time, no, but we did confirm that based on earlier surveillance. It was the same build, same clothing, same tattoos, and also just confirming it with the eyewitness accounts. So we did confirm that that was most likely Jesse.
So you surmised, like you made an assumption, correct?
Non-assumption, it was based on accumulation of facts that we had found. If you'll note, at 8:34 p.m., we found all those factors were matching a description of Jesse James. That was where we validly identified him as Jesse James, and then that was one of the multiple factors we used in identifying that this person was also most likely Jesse James at the 2 a.m. slot there.
I'm sorry, but at the 8:34 where you just pointed out, it says matching the description provided by the witness's mugshot and photo. It doesn't clearly state that it was a direct, like a positive match. Is that correct?
We didn't use those words directly, but that was based on good judgment of all the factors that we had cumulatively.
Okay. One last question, Detective. Did you interrogate anyone else other than Jesse James?
In terms of a potential suspect?
Correct.
No, we didn't have anyone. We didn't have anyone else as a potential suspect at the time. Again, a number of factors came into us identifying Jesse James as the shooter.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, any reexamination?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thanks very much, officer. Okay, the Crown's next witness, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. We would like to call Mr. Lee.
Hi, how's it going?
Hi, Mr.
Okay.
Lee. I wanted to begin by expressing my condolences for your loss and acknowledging your bravery for testifying before this court today.
Thank you.
Mr. Lee, can you please tell us what you did on Canada Day?
Well, on Canada Day, I was at a party with Marley, Jesse, and Alex.
And can you please describe the events of this party?
Well, we were all hanging out and it was super chill. But then Jesse and Alex got into this huge fight. Like, this fight was bad. Like, it was heavy blows and huge punches. It first started as an argument and then it escalated into this huge fight.
Can you describe the fight?
Well, the fight started with the huge argument. It was really bad. Once the two started throwing punches, Alex's cousins ended up joining the fight. And then that's when Jesse pulled out a gun. One of those handguns cops have.
Was there anything else that you remember about the events of the party?
Well, around 8:30, I went to the bathroom with Jesse at my apartment. I was gone for about 15 to 20 minutes, maybe.
And can you describe the events of what happened while you were in your apartment?
When I was using the bathroom, Jesse waited in the hallway for me, like friends do, Well, I was in the bathroom, I heard him call someone and said, "I'll get it done tomorrow morning." And then later, "I'm done with that guy." It was muffled, definitely, but just got me scared and unnerved. In the moment, I didn't think much of it. But then when Alex Robinson was killed, it was just too much.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. I will now move on to the time of the shooting. So please take your time in answering my questions and let me know if you need to take any breaks.
Thank
Where
you.
were you at the time of the shooting?
Well, I was in my bedroom getting ready to fall asleep.
Can you please describe the events of the shooting?
Before the shots were fired, I was in my bedroom getting ready to sleep. I got up to get a glass of water, say goodnight to them. As soon as I opened my door, I saw the front door open and the hallway light go on. A person barged in with a gun in a hand, went straight to the living room area with just guns blazing. And they shot both Marley and Alex right in my living room. There's blood everywhere and it was just horrible. Just imagine seeing your friend shot and there's blood everywhere. How would you react,
I can't imagine how tough that must have been for you. Can you please describe the shooter?
The shooter was wearing all black and a baseball hat on. They didn't have gloves, but they had a mask on, like a light blue one, the medical ones. When I saw the shooter, I noticed they had a black handgun, very similar to the one Jesse had. At first, I couldn't tell who the shooter was, but before they left, they took their mask off and I saw that it was Jesse.
And what happened after the shooter left, Mr. Lee?
I heard Jesse say, "You got what was coming to you." And he ran out and Marley ran and locked the front door. I immediately went back to my bedroom to call 911, but I just couldn't find my phone. I told Marley to call instead. I tried to stop the bleeding using gauze and a first aid kit, but there was just so much blood. I couldn't stop the bleeding. I was covered in my friend's blood. Then at 2:30, the police showed up. By 3, I got news Alex passed away. I couldn't save him that night. Tried so hard, but he's gone.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, cross-examination.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Ashley. Jesse James accompanied you to your apartment at around 8:30 on July 1st. Is that correct?
Yes, he did.
Your Honor, permission to approach the witness with Exhibit 10, which is the floor plan sketch,
Sure.
which has already been
Just-
submitted.
Yeah, that's fine. From now on, you don't have to seek my permission. You can just tell me that you're going to share your screen and then
Okay.
go from there.
Thank you. Mr. Lee, do you see the floor sketch in front of you?
Yeah,
And can you confirm the yellow circles represent the light fixtures that are found in your apartment?
yeah, those are the lights where my lights are in my apartment.
Can you confirm that at the time of the shooting, only your bedroom light and the light in the hallway closest to the exit were the only two lights on at the time of the shooting?
Yeah, the bedroom light behind me was on, and the hallway light was on as well. Yeah.
So it was pretty dark in your apartment at that time, correct?
I wouldn't say it was dark. I'd say it was lit, but not fully dark.
Right, but you just said that there was only the two lights on and it was around 2 o'clock in the morning, correct?
Yeah, it was 2 o'clock in the morning, but I had my lights on behind me in my bedroom. So when I opened my door, I could see clearly into the hallway. Yeah.
Okay. Whereabouts in the hallway between those two lights from the hallway, like at the top part of your screen, you will see exit to the stairwell and then the living room light. Where was the perpetrator situated when he started opening fire?
When Jesse walked down the hallway, it was almost parallel to where the TV is.
Okay. And you said earlier in your statement that the perpetrator undid his mask and said something. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Whereabouts was he located when he said that, when he took his mask off?
I'd say basically almost at the living room area, not too far.
Was his back to you?
No, his back wasn't to me. His side was.
But he was exiting, correct?
Yeah.
So he didn't have his back turned to you. Is that correct?
Objection,
No.
Your Honor. This has been asked and answered.
I'll let the witness answer that question.
Sorry, could you ask the question again, please?
The perpetrator was exiting, so his back would be facing you, correct?
So if when I was in the bedroom and when I looked in, his back when he turned was towards the kitchen hallway. That's where he turned. So I saw his side, and that's where I saw his face.
So if you saw his side, you could not see his face 100%, correct?
No, that would be wrong. When he turned his back towards the kitchen hallway. That's where his back was. So when he turned his face, that's where I saw him. I mean, I've known Jesse for about 10 years plus, so you just don't forget that, you know?
Okay, Mr. Lee, would you like to see justice for your friend, Alex Robinson?
You know, it's hard to say that I would like to see justice because at the end of the day, you're going to discredit everything I say. And I don't know if that will bring justice because I know for a fact who I saw that night, and it's just hard.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay, any re-examination, Ms. Robertson?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Lee. Okay, I understand the Crown has one more witness.
Yes, I would like to bring the final witness, Marley Johnson, to the stand.
Hello.
Okay,
And I would like to offer my condolences for your loss. If you need a break or if you're having trouble hearing me, please let me know and I will adjust my mic accordingly.
Okay.
For the record, my name is Sharon Kaur. State your name for the record.
Marley Johnson.
Is your boyfriend Alex Robinson?
He was before he passed away. He was a really kind person. I loved him very much. He didn't deserve to die.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a tattoo artist.
And what did you do on Canada Day?
I attended a party on the grounds of my friend Ash's apartment with a bunch of our friends.
Were you drinking or smoking pot?
No, I was not drinking or smoking that night.
What is the relationship like between Jesse James and Alex Robinson?
They were old friends. They knew each other for a really long time. They were best friends, and well, they used to work together. They were super close. Jesse used to drive Alex to work like every morning, but they fell apart recently because Jesse thought that Alex tried to murder one of his close friends, Bailey Barker, which he did.
Did anything significant happen at the Canada Day party?
Well, we were all hanging out, and I saw Alex and Jesse talking for a significant amount of time. I was really surprised that they were being civil, but then after a while, I heard yelling, and I looked over, and they were just going at each other, and it was so physical. It escalated, and Jesse pulled a gun out on Alex.
Who threw the first punch?
Jesse threw the first punch.
You said a gun was pulled out. What did the gun look like?
It was small and black, like the ones like police have. It was really similar to that.
Great. Was there a conversation exchanged after the fight?
Yeah, actually, Jesse made a threat to Alex. I heard him say that you're done and that Alex was gonna get what was coming, and he just had to wait for it. It was insane, so scary.
After the incident, where did you go?
We went back upstairs to Taylor and Ash's apartment. It was very overwhelming, so we just wanted to cool out. And we were hanging out there for a long time, and that's when the shooter broke in.
At what time did the perpetrator burst into your house?
I was around 2 a.m.
And what were they wearing?
They had a baseball hat on, a black short sleeve t-shirt, and a mask, a black medical mask.
Ms. Johnson, on the night of the shooting, can you describe the man you saw enter your apartment?
I can, actually, because he showed his face and spoke to me. He was a medium build, he had tattoos on both arms, and when he did identify himself, we saw that it was Jesse.
Ms. Johnson, did you see the gunman's face?
I did, yes. They took off their mask, and it was Jesse James. he also spoke to us, and it was Jesse's voice, his tattoos, it was Jesse's face. Jesse killed my boyfriend.
All right, great. Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, cross-examination.
Hello, Ms. Johnson.
Hello.
What color mask was the gunman wearing?
I believe it was black.
And when were you able to identify that the gunman was Jesse James?
When the gunman was Jesse James, I identified him when he took off his mask and spoke directly to us.
Okay, Your Honor, I will approach the witness with Exhibit 2, the 911 call transcript, which has been admitted into evidence.
Yeah, go ahead.
No apologies. Okay, Ms. Johnson, can you please read the highlighted portion at the bottom of the first page?
Yes. Do you know who shot you? I don't know who they were. It happened so fast. They were wearing masks.
And Ms. Johnson, this was after the gunman took off their mask. Is that correct?
Yes, this is
Conversation?
correct.
Yes. Okay. So I put to you that you did not identify that it was Jesse James after he took off his mask in accordance with this 911 call transcript.
Sorry, what's the question?
Ms. Johnson, I would like to know if you thought it was Jesse James after the fact, but you didn't know it was Jesse James. Is that correct?
I did know it was Jesse James. I was just focused on getting help for my dying boyfriend, that I was not concerned with giving super descriptive answers to the operator. I was just trying to get as much information and get help as soon as possible.
And by super descriptive answers, you mean the identity of the gunman. Is that correct?
I was more concerned with getting help to make sure my boyfriend died than giving a step-by-step description, yes.
Okay. And Marley Johnson, you don't know Jesse James very well. Is that correct?
I would say I know him. I've known him for 6 months. I've seen him plenty of times, but we weren't attached at the hip, no.
Okay. And Marley Johnson, you know Jesse James's phone number. Is that correct?
Yes, I actually stated it in my interview. I do know it.
Could you tell us Jesse James's phone number?
I can, yes. It's 416-555-2842.
Okay. And Ms. Johnson, is there a reason why you have Jesse James's phone number memorized?
Not particularly. I do have a pretty good memory, so it was easy for me to remember it. And of course, Alex and Jesse were friends, so I had it in case Alex ever needed it. I was a good girlfriend.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Johnson. One last question. In your interview with the detective, you had stated that you didn't know much about Jesse James except for his phone number. Is that correct?
I would say that I, on a very personal level, didn't know Jesse's interest, his likes. I wasn't his best friends, but I could easily identify him as who he was. I knew of his tattoos. I actually was very interested in his tattoos. I appreciated the art. I knew what he sounded like. I'd spoken to him and seen him face to face countless amount of times to know who he was. But no, I didn't have any particular deep knowledge of his interests and likes in life. No.
Your Honor, I would like to approach Ms. Johnson with the interview of Marley Johnson on July 29th of 2020.
Sure, go ahead.
Marley Johnson, can you please read this highlighted portion?
Yes, Alex has been keeping a low profile since the shooting of BB, but we never thought that Jesse would actually do something. I don't know much aside from that, except that Jesse's phone number is 416-555-2842.
So, Ms. Johnson, in your statement, you said, besides knowing about the relationship and the fight between Alex Robertson and Bailey Barker, you don't know much about Jesse James besides his phone number. Is that correct?
I would say that I don't, pardon?
According to this statement.
I would say that I don't know him personally in the sense, as I said, his likes and interests, but I have met him multiple times. I knew of him. we were in the mutual circle. I knew identifying things about him, but he wasn't my best friend. No.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Any reexamination?
No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Johnson. Okay, is that the case for the Crown?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. What we'll do, since we're halfway through, we'll just take 10 minutes. We'll take a 10-minute break. So we'll come back at 7:10, and I'll hear the defense case.
All right, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I'll hear from the defense now. I'll hear from the defense's first witness, please.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense will be calling our expert witness, Dr. Sam Dubois.
Dr. Sam Dubois here.
Okay. We'll assume that Dr. Dubois has been sworn or affirmed, so you can go ahead, Ms. Booth.
Dr. Dubois, can you please state your name and your area of expertise for the record?
My name is Dr. Sam Dubois. I'm a professor of psychology and criminology at McGill University. I specialize in cognitive psychology and human memory, and my research focuses on eyewitness memory and false memories.
And Dr. Dubois, can you tell us a little bit about memory retention and memory recollection?
Sure. Well, just to begin with, contrary to the popular belief that memory is something like a recording device, and it means one can replay that recorded information. Well, this belief is far from true. Rather, human memory is a constructive process wherein a person constructs their memory, sometimes directly from the event they experienced. Sometimes they add their own biases to this process, or sometimes they get the information exposed outside the event. I mean, not directly related to the event. Like, think like this, like that a person tries to stitch different pieces of information subconsciously in process of recollection. Some from the event, some provided by other people, or sometimes information is simply made up just to construct or replay the entire motion picture of events. Well, just to let you know, it is important to note that memory recollection cannot be said to be entirely accurate. Neither it can be said to be entirely inaccurate. Well, there are a number of factors that come in play and impacts the strength of memory retention and its recollection. A physical environment and mental state of mind are prominent factors that have the most impact on the memory strength. Physical environments such as condition of lighting at the time of event, distance of the person from the event, and the duration the person was exposed to the event are some of the major ones. For example, low lighting conditions impacts memory negatively, and so is the shorter duration of event. So people often, and for example, if the event has occurred in a short burst, it is highly unlikely a person will be able to remember or recollect or retain the details of the event. Well, just to add here, people often believe that traumatic events are most easily retained in the memory. But this again is just a belief, it's just a misconception. Rather, as per research, traumatic and stressful events produce weaker memories. During traumatic events, it is natural for a person to have a memory lapses or lack of recollection. As a result, to fill the gaps in the recollection, a person may create false memories that could be subconsciously derived from other sources of information, or could be pure misinformation. I mean, it's not a deliberate attempt. However, as the person constructs the recollection, he might look for clues that reinforces his beliefs or biases, or he just simply picks different bits and bits of information to fill those gaps, just to create a coherent narrative.
And Dr. Dubois, can you tell the court what documents you examined pertaining to this case?
Well, I examined 4 documents. I was provided interviews of Marley Johnson, interview of Ashley, both were submitted as affidavits to me, a report of investigating officer David Giroux, and 911 transcript.
And Dr. Dubois, can you tell us how these factors that you had previously mentioned regarding memory and memory retention contribute to the witness accounts of Marley Johnson and Ashley and their recollection of events?
Well, after reviewing all the documents, which I mentioned earlier, interviews, investigating officers, report, 911 transcript, I found there were quite a few inconsistencies in the witness account of both Marley Johnson and Ashley. And on certain things, both the witnesses have vastly different recollection of the events. For instance, in 911 report, Marley Johnson was not sure about the type of gun used. So she identified the gun either as handgun or revolver. However, in the interview with the detective on 29 July, Marley Johnson was sure it was a handgun. While I also observed inconsistencies in the interview affidavits provided to me. For instance, as per Marley Johnson, Jesse James left the apartment by slamming the door behind him. While as per Ash Lee, Marley Johnson ran to the door and closed it after Jesse James left. Another instance, as per Marley Johnson, Ashley came out of the bedroom after the gunman left. However, as per Ashley, she had just entered the living room to grab a glass of water when gunman entered the apartment, meaning Ashley was in the living room at the time. When I review these inconsistencies, I examine these inconsistencies, I find most likely explanation for these gaps in their accounts, recollections, or inconsistency differences in the recollection of the events. It could be attributed to the factors that were at play when Marley Johnson and Ashley were at the time of the event. Both were exposed to extreme event wherein their lives were threatened, they were traumatized. The event happened in a very short duration and it occurred in low lighting conditions. It is also likely that they merged the memories from the fighting incident from the previous evening during the recollection process and were influenced by their emotional trauma. Moreover, I also found there were major red flags in the post-shooting interviews in that Officer Giroux, he used the leading questioning style, which is essentially a biased. For example, referring to the 911 report, I'll quote. So detective, Officer Giroux is asking Marley Johnson, quote, "Thanks for letting me know. Do you know who shot you?" Marley Johnson, quote, "Well, I think it was Jesse James. I think it was Jesse James. The gunman looked like Jesse, like the same height and same stature, but I couldn't see their face, so I'm not sure. They had a mask on. Actually, remember that after they shot us, Jesse took their mask off and said, you got what's coming. It sounded like Jesse too." Detective, quote, "Wait, so Jesse took their mask off? That's a leading question. It literally essentially tells the witness what it's a predetermined a question. So detective is already determined it's Jesse. And then detective asks another question. It's a following question, which is again a lead question in my view. "You heard Jesse's voice." So I find leading questioning style used by Officer Giroux is a major red flag in the interview process. In addition, I also found photo lineup, which seemed to be more like a futile exercise, as the usefulness of photo lineup is only when the culprit is unidentified. However, in this case, the witness had already predetermined it was Jesse James. So it was very obvious that they would pinpoint the same picture which they already know of.
Thank you, Dr. Dubois. What is your opinion on the eyewitness accounts of Marley Johnson and Ashley?
Well, as mentioned earlier, there is no scientific theory that can explicitly prove that memory recollection of a person is accurate or inaccurate. However, factors within which memory was formed can, to a degree, indicate its reliability. In this case, in my opinion, memory recollection seems to be questionable or unreliable.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dubois. I have no further questions.
Okay, cross-examination.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Rebecca Mons. I'm one of the prosecution attorneys. Is it all right if I call you Dr. Dubois?
Yes, please.
Thank you. In your witness statement on page 34, you have stated, I acknowledge that the accuracy of some areas of study on the subjects of eyewitness memory retention and false memories necessarily remain in the dark, as they are untestable by traditional scientific methods or quantitative data analysis. If the principles of eyewitness memory retention and false memories still remain in the dark, how can you accurately apply them to this case?
Well, just to clarify the context of this sentence, as it appears in the sentence itself, in cognitive psychology, we are dealing with qualitative factors as opposed to quantitative factors. Such kind of disclosures are quite normal in the world of psychology. Research which do not really give a quantitative results, and the research which relies on qualitative factors necessarily it's more like we are not really giving some statement like 20% decline in memory could be result of certain level of stress. So it's a very explicit statement in cognitive psychology, which psychologists rarely would make, or they do not make, because we are not really relying on quantitative factors here. We are relying on qualitative and subjective factors. So the meaning of dark should be interpreted more as not unreliability, but it's more like unknown factors. And I said earlier, inaccuracy and accuracy is basically a function of how much factors are known and how much factors are unknown.
Dr. Dubois, you have stated in your witness statement on page 34 that you used your own research to establish your conclusions. Would you agree with me that your research is based on scientifically untestable theories? Is that correct?
Well, I based this testimony based on not only research papers which were published in highly coveted journals. I also used the research papers from different other authors. My credentials have been already submitted in the court submissions. I've already submitted the list of the research and the research which I relied on. As mentioned earlier, cognitive psychology depends upon a lot of qualitative factors. As such, it would be incorrect to say that the theories are entirely untestable. They're tested to an extent. However, we do make a disclosure in the normal course of publishing research.
So are you confirming that they are not testable by scientific analysis?
No, they are only testable to a certain extent.
Is it accurate?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay, you can continue, please.
It is testable to a certain extent. It is not entirely untestable.
May you explain how you would apply this test?
Well, we look at the sample size of different, we look at sample size of, data. However, the sample size, the sample itself doesn't give us a very quantitative readings. As in, just to give you an example, the temperature is 15 degree, temperature is 20 degree. We don't get those kind of data points. We get data points which are rather qualitative in nature. Something like high, low, medium, low, those sort of data points we get, and we deal with those sort of data points.
May you be specific as to which parts are testable and which parts are not?
Well, to explain this, it'll be more prudent for me to say with an example. Let's say we know a forest and we want to say, and we just know this fact, how that forest is dangerous. That's a fact. How dangerous is that forest? We need to get inside and make some sort of affirmations to find certain factors. We know the forest is dangerous, that's a fact. We know it is dangerous because of certain animals. We may not know how many animals, but we are able to figure it out. Yes, we know the direction, where the direction is going. We know this will lead to this. If we get into a forest, we might be harmed. So that's sort of a cognitive psychology field is something like that. We deal with directions. We do have certain relationships, but we cannot really have a pure quantitative relationship. As I said earlier, 20% decline will not cause 20% increase, something like that. We don't have those numbers.
I would like to state for the record that Mr. Dubois was not able to identify which parts were testable. And is it accurate to say that the information you have provided to the court today is unbiased?
Could you please tell me what are you referring to here?
Just in general, can you say that the information you provide today, essentially because you're also using your own research, is it unbiased?
I'm using the research across. It includes my research. I'm very known in the field. As you've already seen that I've already published 9 research papers on the topic. I'm part of that faculty that produces these research. And as such, I do have credible knowledge in this field, which is attested by other researchers in the same field.
So then you're saying that if you're using your own research, are you confirming that it's not unbiased?
It is absolutely unbiased because research papers are scrutinized by other researchers as well. It's entirely not published by me and accepted by me. It is published in some popular journals and famous journals, which are read and scrutinized and criticized by various researchers in the field. So it's not entirely, it's criticized at a very high level. So it's not really something which I would say, I would just use it and it's not tested. My research papers are tested.
Is it fair to say you'll be making $14,500 to testify at court today?
Well, I haven't really calculated that figure, but yes, I'm being paid as per industry standards.
And
the
how
details have been submitted in the court.
And how can the court trust that the testimony you've given today is not for the benefit of your own research and your bank account?
I'm sorry, could you please repeat the question?
How can the court trust that the testimony you've given today is not for the benefit of your own research and your own bank account?
Well, this is for the court to decide. I've been approached by the defense to give an unbiased testimony, which I did. And I worked as per the standards of the industry. And that's pretty much the comment I have for this.
And would you agree with me there is no possible way to know if Marley Johnston and Ashley's memories were inaccurate? Is that correct?
It's both ways. I cannot be sure it's entirely accurate or inaccurate.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Any re-examination?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. You're free to
Thank you, Your Honor.
go. Okay, the next defense witness.
Yes, Your Honor. We call Jesse James to the stand.
I'm here.
Okay, whenever you're ready, Mr. McLeod.
Can you state your name for the record?
Jesse James.
What were you doing on the evening of July 1st?
I was at a party at it's a Canada party barbecue, 30 Dominion, and I was with my friends. So I was hanging out and smoke and alcohol like that.
And what kind of activities were happening at this barbecue?
Actually, I already told you that it was some kind of it's a party time, and we drank and we have smoke and we are meeting our friends and families. It's like that.
Would you say you were intoxicated?
Yeah, on that day, it's pretty much yes.
Do you still remember the events of that evening?
Actually, it's a little bit blurry, but I remember where I was and but whom I with. Yeah, I remember.
Did you ever leave the party?
Yes, at 8:30.
And why did you leave?
Actually, I went with Ashley. Actually, she wants to use the washroom.
And how long were you there for? Like, how long did you accompany her?
Around 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay. Did you go right back to the party?
Yes.
What happened that night?
Actually, my old buddy and Alex and we had a fight, and actually we are both are drunk, and when you are drunk and you can lose your cool. So it happens. So we had a fight.
What was the fight about?
Actually, Alex was talking to me and argue about my friend Bibi. It's his name is Bally Barker, and I told him that we are at the party. I don't want to ruin that party. It's a Canada Day. We have to rejoice our time, and we have to meet our friends, not to come here for argument. But when I told you that I don't want to talk about it for Bibi, and in that way, fight started.
Okay. What kind of a relationship did you have with Alex Robinson?
Actually, he was my old buddy, and we were friends, and I drove him to the work.
Did anyone pull out a weapon?
No.
Do you own a weapon?
Yes, years ago, but not anymore.
What happened after the fight?
Actually, when the fight happened, I lost my cell phone in the fight, and I have to cancel that my cell phone number, and I cancel it on the 2nd of July that afternoon.
Where did you go when you left the party?
Actually, I have to go back to my friend Bibi.
What did you do while you were there?
It's just like smoking. We have smoke and drinking, something like that. Yeah.
Was there anyone else there that can confirm that you were at Bibi's house?
Yes, her girlfriend and 3 other friends.
And what time did you leave Bibi's house?
Bibi's house around 3 a.m.
Back to the Canada Day fight.
Yeah.
Why would you and Bibi think that Alex Robinson attempted to kill Bibi?
Actually, the problem is that the Bibi is a high-ranking member of one of the gang, Crimson King gang, and there also is Alex's cousin also have a rival gang. So it's called something like Blood Syndicate, like that. And just because of that, they have rivals with each other. So it happens whenever 2 gangs are rivaling at that.
And are you part of a gang?
No, I don't want to be. I never be.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay, cross-examination.
Right. You stated you lost your phone, but that is not stated anywhere in your witness statement. Is that correct?
It's correct. Yes.
Right. At what time did you go to Ash's apartment with them?
With Ashley around 8:30.
When you came back to the apartment with Ashley during the Canada Day party, you only stood in the hallway and checked your phone, correct?
Yes, correct.
In your witness statement, you stated that you did not call anyone when you were at the apartment, correct?
When? Please, can you state your question again, please?
In the witness statement, you stated that you did not call anyone while you were at the apartment, correct?
Which apartment? With Ashley?
Yes, when she was in the bathroom.
Yes, I didn't call.
I would like to pull up a demonstrative on the screen. It is Jesse James' cell phone records. The first line over there at 8:34, it states that you made a call from Domino in Maidstone, which is near Ash's place. Is that correct?
It's not my phone number.
What is your phone number?
416-222-1980.
But that is the phone number that is on your record with your address.
My address is not the one it's written here.
Okay, we can move on. You believe that Alex Robinson tried to kill your friend Bailey Barker. This made you upset and you were angry at Alex, correct?
Actually, both are my friends, so definitely upset.
Right. This is also one of the reasons the altercation took place in the first place. Is that correct?
Actually, it's not. Actually, he wants to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it at that time because it's a party time. Why should I ruin our party time? That's why. I don't want to fight that. I don't want to argue on that.
Yeah, no problem. You stated in your witness statement that you didn't punch Alex because he said you couldn't be trusted, but rather you punched him because he called you BB's little goon. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's correct.
In this witness statement, you stated that you threw the first punch, correct?
Yes, correct.
However, you told Bailey Barker that Alex threw the first punch, correct?
No.
You also pulled out a gun on Alex, correct?
Sorry, I don't have a gun.
You have a history of carrying around guns, correct?
Yes.
Mr. James, do you have tattoos on both your arms?
Yes.
Let's talk about the time when you were at Bailey Barker's place. How did you get there?
How I get there?
Mhm.
By my car.
You were driving
Yeah.
while you were drunk?
Yes.
Right. You will agree with me that you arrived at Barker's place at 10:45 p.m. Is that correct?
Around 10:30 or 10:40, you can say that. Yes.
Right. I would like to present Exhibit 8. This is the general area map. Jesse James, you will agree with me that the distance between the crime scene and where Bailey, your alibi, lives is around 10 minutes away considering traffic?
I have to check it through GPS. It's always the estimated time. I cannot
Yes.
say anything about it.
The map is right in front of you.
It's with the traffic or without the traffic?
With traffic, you stated in your witness statement that it took you 10 minutes to get from Ash's place to BB's place.
Maybe 10 minutes, okay?
Right.
I don't remember actually.
Okay, so if you were to go to Ash's place and make a round trip to BB's place, it would take you around 20 minutes in total.
I have to go and check it. I don't remember. I cannot recall that what is the estimated time. I cannot recall that.
You will also agree with me that Alex Robinson's murder took place at Ashley's house, correct?
Excuse me, can you repeat your question again?
You will agree with me that Alex Robinson's murder took place at Ashley's house?
Yes, I heard about that.
At 1:30 a.m., Shannon and Bailey Barker returned to their rooms, so you were alone, correct?
Yes, I was alone.
Jesse James, Bailey Barker came back to the living room at 2:30 a.m. So you were alone for this entire hour from 1:30 to 2:30. This includes at 2 a.m. at the time of the murder, correct?
What is the relation with at the time of murder? You're asking about Bailey Barker's.
Right.
I was there at the time of murder.
Let me rephrase.
One question, please.
Let me rephrase.
Please.
Between 1:30 to 2:30 a.m., you were alone in the living room.
Yes, I was.
All right, correct. No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, any examination?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. James.
Thank you.
Okay, defense's next witness.
Your Honor, at this time, we would like to call Bailey Barker.
Okay. We'll assume that Bailey Barker has been sworn or affirmed, so you can go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Barker. Before we begin, can you please state your name for the record?
My name is Bailey Barker, and my alias is BB.
Can you tell us where you obtained the nickname BB?
I'm a high-ranking member of the Crimson Kings gang. So yeah, that's what it comes from.
And can you tell us a little bit more about that, being a member of the Crimson King gang?
Okay. Well, I had to provide for my family and my 7 siblings, so I got involved in gangs. And yeah, I've been doing it since I was a teenager, mainly.
And Mr. Barker, can you tell us about your relationship with Jesse James?
Oh, we're pretty close. We're tight. Yeah, Jesse James is a good friend of mine.
Okay, and what were you doing on July 1st, 2020?
I had a small barbecue at my place. I had some friends over, and my girlfriend Shannon was there too.
And what did you do?
We pretty much smoked and drank the whole day. And then suddenly, unannounced, Jesse showed up at 10:30 or 10:45. And he looked pretty beat up.
Can you explain what you mean by he looked pretty beat up?
He got into a fight with this guy, Alex Robinson, who tried to kill me, if I may. So he got a cut on his chin, on his eyebrow, and I helped him clean up. And also, he was like very mad, and I told him to calm down, and I invited him to stay over the night. So he stayed for a while.
And until what time did you all hang out?
Okay, so after he arrived, we watched fireworks for 45 minutes, I would say, and we drank, we smoked, and around 1, 3 of my friends left, and he stayed. Shannon, him, and myself were on my living room, hanging, and everything was cool. And then at 1:30, Shannon and I went to a room, and I left the door open because I have a dog. His name is Wallace, and he's a Rottweiler. So anytime I close a door, the dog goes off. And Jesse was there in the couch watching some TV, some shows, I don't know, reality TV.
And at what time did Jesse James leave your apartment?
3 a.m. But we went back to the living room and we chatted for a while. And he said, man, everything's cool. Like, I'm fine. I'm going to leave. I'm like, okay, up to you. And he left at 3 a.m.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barker. I have no further questions.
Okay, cross-examination.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. May I begin?
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Barker, you said that Jesse came into your apartment initially at 10:45 p.m. Is that correct?
Yes.
You also mentioned that between 11 and 11:45 p.m., Jesse told you about their fight with Alex Robinson. Is that correct?
Yes.
You'll agree that Jesse was pretty beat up and had lots of cuts on his face when he arrived at your apartment, correct?
Correct.
And you'll agree that you helped Jesse then clean these cuts on his right eyebrow and chin, correct?
Correct.
And you'll agree that Jesse was fuming over the fight with Alex, correct?
Correct.
You'll agree that you were in your room between the hours of 1:30 a.m. and 2:30 a.m., correct?
Correct.
You'll agree that you could not see Jesse James during this time, correct?
Correct, but I could hear if he left.
Mr. Barker, you'll agree that you live in an apartment complex, correct?
Yeah. Correct.
And you'll agree that during the hour where you were in your bedroom, it is possible that you could have heard noises from, say, anybody else in your apartment complex at that time, correct?
No, I can hear anything that happens outside, not right at. next to me.
So you can hear everything that happens outside of your apartment unit?
Yeah, because it was summer. I don't have an AC, so I opened the windows.
Okay, thank you. And you'll agree that over the course of the evening, you had some friends coming and going from your apartment at different times, correct?
They all left at 1.
But Jesse James arrived later and left later than everyone, according to your statement, correct?
Yeah, he arrived at 10:45 and left at 3 a.m.
Thank you. And you'll agree that these friends, Jesse James included, did not require your physical assistance in entering and exiting your apartment unit since you leave the door open, correct?
No, because they know my dog, so they don't need to.
So
But
your friends can leave your apartment without your physical assistance, correct?
yeah, but my dog goes off.
Thank you. And you'll agree that it is then possible that Jesse left the apartment without your physical assistance between the hours of 1:30 a.m. and 2:30 a.m., correct?
Correct. If he
Thank you,
treats
Mr. Barker.
Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Barker. Moving on. You'll agree that you believe Alex's murder could be gang related?
Yeah, because he's related to the Blood Drop Syndicate. His cousins are in that gang.
Thank you. And you'll agree that Jesse was aware that you believed Alex had shot you, correct?
Correct.
You'll agree that Jesse has sold drugs for you before. Is that correct?
Once.
Thank you. And you'll agree that you have tried getting Jesse to join your gang?
Yeah, but he wasn't allowing me to intervene. Like, he told me to, I shouldn't say that word in the court, but just to stop.
Mr. Barker, would you say that you trust Jesse?
Did I what, sorry?
Would you say that you trust Jesse James?
Oh, yes.
And would you say that he is a loyal friend to you?
Yeah.
Would you say that he is a friend that would protect you?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Barker. No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, any reexamination?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Barker. Okay, is that the case for the defense?
Defense rests, Your Honor.
Okay, I take it there's no reply evidence from the Crown?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, I will hear closing submissions then.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I begin?
Yes, go ahead.
My name is Rachel Robertson, and on behalf of the prosecution, I would like to thank the court for their time and patience in hearing this matter today. I would also like to thank both Marley Johnson and Ashley for their bravery in testifying before this court today. Ultimately, the facts of this case are quite simple. And the fact is that Jesse James murdered Alex Robinson in cold blood as an act of revenge. Revenge for trying to get him involved in gang activity, revenge for the attempted murder of Bailey Barker, revenge for their fight on Canada Day. And the defense has tried to convince you that Jesse James couldn't have possibly committed this murder, that they were with Bailey Barker the entire time. But there is no physical evidence of Bailey and Jesse being together. And as we heard, Bailey Barker testified that they don't know if Jesse was in their apartment at the time of the murder. Jesse himself even admitted to being alone during the entire hour that the murder was committed. And the defense has argued that it's impossible that Jesse was in two places at once. And that's correct. Jesse wasn't in two places at once. He was at Alex Robinson's apartment. I remind the court of the expert testimony of Constable Lloyd Devon. Constable Lloyd Devon is a detective specializing in homicide cases. In this case, Constable Lloyd Devon introduced cell phone GPS data, surveillance footage, and DNA evidence, all of which led them, an expert with years of experience, to conclude that Jesse James committed the murder of Alex Robinson. I would also like the court to be reminded of the testimonies of both Marley Johnson and Ashley. Both witnesses recalled the shooter to have the same build, tattoo placement, and voice of their friend, Jesse James. And both Marley Johnson and Ashley saw Jesse James remove their mask before leaving the apartment. The defense argued that the memories of the witnesses could not be trusted, that maybe the lights were too dim. But Dr. Dubois' own research has shown that this is not true. Dubois himself cannot even confirm one way or the other whether their memories were affected at all. This science is novel and has not been relied upon in our courts before. This is for good reason. This science is unproven, untestable, and unreliable. Marley and Ash were friends with Jesse James, and it's fair to believe that if your friend broke into your apartment and shot you, that you would recognize them. The defense tried to argue that Marley and Ash couldn't confirm the identity of the shooter. This is just not true. Marley and Ash both identified Jesse James as the shooter. Their statements never wavered. They identified him during the 911 call. They identified him in a photo lineup. They identified him in their witness interviews weeks after the shooting, and they are identifying him now. The conflict between Jesse James and Alex Robinson was established by Jesse's own testimony. Jesse admitted to fighting with Alex hours before the murder. He admitted that he punched him first. He admitted that he was fuming, that his relationship with Alex had deteriorated, and he was angry that Alex tried to kill his friend. It is clear that Jesse James committed this murder as an act of revenge. He even threatened Alex after their fight, and after shooting him, he told the victims that they got what was coming. I urge the court to consider the evidence put forth today and to find Jesse James guilty of the murder of Alex Robinson and attempted murder of Marley Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, here the closing submission from the defense.
Yes, Your Honor, I will begin. Your Honor, members of the jury, this is the final time I will be addressing you in regards to this case. It would be extremely irresponsible to convict Jesse James of first-degree murder for the tragic homicide of Alex Robinson, and equally as irresponsible to convict him of the attempted murder of Marley Johnson. In this case, it is clear that the standard of proof, that of beyond a reasonable doubt, has not been met for the two essential elements needed to convict the accused: first, intent, and secondly, deliberately committing the acts. On July 2nd, 2020, at approximately 2 a.m., a lone gunman entered 30 Domino Avenue, took the elevator up to the 4th floor, entered Unit 401, and opened fire, killing Alex Robinson and gravely injuring Marley Johnson. That lone gunman was not Jesse James. First, let us explore the element of intent. Now, we know that Jesse James was not affiliated with a gang. This can be supported by the fact that two of his good friends, Alex Robinson and Bailey Barker, were tied to two opposing gangs. Jesse James had no interest in gang affiliation. He wanted peace between his friends. The Crown has tried to convince you otherwise. However, it is obvious that a drunk fight among longtime friends does not equate to intent or a motive to murder. Over the course of this trial, the only two surviving eyewitnesses, Marley Johnson and Ash Lee, have shown a lack of credibility. Ash Lee and Marley Johnson have a different recollection of the events that transpired that same night. They both claim to be so sure of specific details of the gunman, but their statements describing the offense are conflicting. I would like to remind the court of the transcript of the 911 call. The emergency dispatcher asked Marley Johnson, "Do you know who shot you?" And Marley Johnson said, "I don't know who they were. It all happened so fast. They were wearing masks." Since then, we have heard a vastly different recollection from Ms. Johnson. We heard from a reliable and professional expert that environmental factors such as lack of lighting, stress and trauma of the event, and the leading questions posed by the officer who interviewed them, as well as the passage of time between the first interviews and the second interviews of Ashley Johnson and Miss Marley Johnson, could explain the false memories and conflicting statements coming from them. Now, it would seem reasonable that between the first recounts of events on July 2nd, 2020, and the recounting of events on July 29th, 2020, that the two witnesses and friends could have time to compare and alter their recapitulation of events. The only surviving witnesses in this case are not reliable, and their lack of certainty casts reasonable doubt. Let us go through what the Crown has claimed is incriminating evidence. First, the DNA evidence. This in no way incriminates the accused Jesse James, and no way proves he was at the scene of the crime earlier that night. that night at 2 a.m. Jesse James was at the scene of the crime earlier in the night, along with others, and was accompanied by the resident of that apartment, who was Ash Lee. Further, multiple people's DNA was found on the handgun, which was recovered from the scene, as explained by Detective Lloyd Devon. The sources of DNA could not be directly tied to Jesse James. Next, allow me to remind you all that this was Canada Day. There were a lot of people out and many known gang members were partying. To use surveillance footage transcription, which only confirms Black clothing and tattoos, is far too general. To say that Jesse James is the only person who wears Black clothing and has tattoos is unreasonable and does not prove Jesse James was at the scene of the crime at the time of the crime beyond a reasonable doubt. The surveillance footage does not identify Jesse James, as no face was recognizable. This was confirmed today by Detective Lloyd Devon. Another element which fails to prove that Jesse James was at the scene of the crime at the time of the crime are the cell phone records. There has been no explanation as to why this cell phone subscription shows two different numbers. Further, the detective stated today that the phone number retrieved for Jesse James used in the cell phone tower tracking data was obtained by Marley Johnson, who just so happens to have his cell phone number memorized, but was not close with Jesse James. Jesse James did not even have his phone on his person after the fight that took place sometime after 8:30 p.m. and before 10:30 p.m. As recounted here today in witness testimony, Jesse James was a part of an altercation. Throughout the exchange of punches thrown and hustle and tussle, Jesse James lost his phone, which is why you can see that he canceled the cell phone subscription later that afternoon on July 2020, as shown by the cell phone subscription obtained by Officer Lloyd Devon. During the events which took place, Jesse James was at Bailey Baker's apartment. Jesse James attended a Canada Day party on July 1st, 2020 at 30 Domino Avenue, accompanied Ash Lee to her apartment around 8:30 p.m. at 30 Domino Avenue in Unit 401, where his DNA was found. And Mr. Jesse James got into an altercation with Alex Robertson, where he subsequently lost his phone, left the party, went to Bailey Barker's house, where he arrived around 10:30, and where he stayed until 3 a.m. The Crown said in their statement that there was no physical evidence proving that Bailey Barker and Alex Robinson were together, while I submit that there's no reliable evidence physically proving that they weren't together. The Crown has to prove these acts beyond a reasonable doubt. The direct evidence provided is not reliable. It's clear that the Toronto Police Services use it in an attempt to stitch together a narrative that is purely based on circumstantial evidence. Accusing Jesse James was convenient because of the fight that occurred earlier that evening between Jesse James and Alex Robinson. Now, unfortunately, as told today, Alex Robinson had a criminal past and close gang ties with his cousins, who are known members of the Blood Drop Syndicate. Alex Robinson was also investigated by the police for the shooting of Bailey Barker. Alex Robinson likely had many enemies. Even so, Alex Robinson deserves true justice, and his loved ones deserve true justice. That justice will not come from wrongly accusing and convicting his good friend, his longtime friend. The court must find Jesse James not guilty of all charges against him.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Booth. Okay. John, you're back.
Yes, I am. Yeah. So at this point, I'll be moving you, Justice Rahman, into a breakout room. And in a few moments, we will reconvene so that he may render his judgment. So we'll be grouping. How long do you think that will take?
John, did you want me to give feedback as well, or how did you want me to do it?
Yeah, feedback as well, yeah.
Okay.
I was just wondering how long you might need in your breakout room in case you want to sort of review your notes or anything.
I don't need more than I think probably about 10 minutes
Okay, fantastic. Yeah.
at the
So then
most.
we'll
Yeah.
regroup at 8:10. Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Let me get the rooms set up. Excellent. See you all in 10 minutes. Okay, I think everyone is back. So Justice, whenever you're ready, we can.
Okay. So what I'll tell you, I'm not going to keep you waiting. I know you all want to know the result. So I'm not going to keep you in suspense. It's a very difficult decision. I think everybody did quite well. You've obviously put a lot of work into this. Both the counsel and the witnesses. I have to say that it's a tough decision, but I won't make any general comments yet. Let me just tell you, who I think won. I will say that the winner is Capilano University. Like I said, I would not say it was an easy decision. It was extremely close. And I have to say, like, everybody did very well. I mean, some of the witnesses were it was very believable. Let's put it that way. I knew you had a script, but it actually, some of you really sold it quite well. So it was well done. And yeah, I thought you also, I was telling John this in the breakout room, you all did a very efficient job. All of you didn't waste a lot of time on things that weren't important. So I didn't feel like I was hearing things I didn't have to, and it wasn't boring at all. Kept me interested. So that's all I'll say for now. I'm going to give you some more individualized feedback, but I won't do it right now over the live stream.
Thank you so much, Justice Rahman. And thank you all for your participation in the 2022 College Cup. Both teams were honestly freaking amazing. Having a chance to sort of see where you were at the very beginning of this competition, and then seeing how you developed as you went through the 4 rounds, bit by bit. It's honestly been really, really inspiring seeing all of you get this into the case and seeing the development. And I have no doubt that all of you will go on to achieve some really, really amazing things in your future careers. And with that, we are going to be saying goodbye to the 2022 College Cup. For all those of you who are tuning in, thank you so much for watching the finals and for helping support our organization. A special shout out to our gold sponsors for this year, the Law Society of Ontario and the Ontario Paralegal Association. Without their support, this honestly couldn't have happened. And a special thanks to Justice Rahman, as well as all the other judges and volunteers who chipped in over the course of this weekend and helped make this event happen. So with that,